How are you? Everything good?
I'm great. I'm great.
So it is true, right? Social Security, particularly with Paul Ryan on the ticket, we have to be worried about the attacks on it.
We have to be very worried. It's not just Paul Ryan. We have Pete Peterson, who is a billionaire from Wall Street, who has pledged to spend huge amounts of money to cut Social Security and the other entitlement programs. So there really is a major effort now to cut back on Social Security and move to the privatization of Social Security, despite the fact, Bill, that it is an enormously popular program. And here's something that may shock some of your listeners who turn on their TV every now and then. Social Security today has a $2.7 trillion surplus.
Yeah, you would never know that.
No, you wouldn't. You would not know it because all of the mainstream media is telling us Social Security is going broke. Well, it can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 21 years, and with very minor fixes, it will be strong for the next 75 years. Social Security is not only a retirement program for seniors. Let's not forget it helps people who have disabilities. It helps widows and orphans if their breadwinner dies. So Social Security is just enormously important for tens of millions of Americans, especially in these difficult economic times. And let me add this, Social Security has not contributed one nickel to the deficit because Social Security is funded through the payroll tax, not the general treasury. The reason for the attacks on Social Security by virtually every Republican and some Democrats has to do with the fact that Republicans from way back have never liked Social Security. They have never believed that Social Security should be there as a retirement program to help tens of millions of people because they just don't believe the government should be doing that. They would rather have people go to Wall Street for their retirement benefits.
Yeah, 77 years Republicans have been saying this. And the numbers I saw the other day, Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, that when President Roosevelt signed this into law, so was it 1935, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There were over 50% of American seniors who were living in poverty.
That's right. And the number today is 10%. It's too high, but we've gone from 50% to 10%, which is a real success story. And also, Bill, here's the point to be made, which is, you know, sometimes what human nature is about is we take things for granted. And Social Security has been around for so long that we take it for granted. But here's the point. When Wall Street crashed 4 years ago, millions and millions of people lost their nest egg. They lost the retirement benefits that they had saved their whole lives for. In 77 years, do you know how many people have not gotten every nickel owed to them by Social Security? Not one.
I was just going to say zero, I would imagine, yeah.
Zero.
And imagine if those monies had been, the Social Security monies had been invested in the market like George Bush wanted to do.
It would have been a disaster. But here's the point. For 77 years, in good economic times and in bad economic times, and we've gone through many, Social Security has paid out every nickel that the beneficiary expected. And the administrative cost of Social Security, how to administer the program, is very, very modest. So it is a program that has worked, and it is a program that we should not be cutting, but we should be strengthening. Second point that I want to make, and that is when our Republican friends tell us that they're so concerned about the deficit, let us remember the following. When Bill Clinton left office in January 2001 to give the presidency over to Bush, this country was running a $236 billion surplus. Surplus. That was a hell of a lot of money. It's a big surplus. What Bush proceeded to do, along with his other deficit hawk friends, including Paul Ryan, and let's never forget this, what they decided to do is go into war in Afghanistan and Iraq and not pay for those wars. Isn't that a funny thing, Bill?
Yeah.
All of these great deficit hawks.
Yeah.
They went into two wars, and at the same time, for the first time in American history, in the midst of a war, not only did they not pay for it, they gave huge tax breaks, much of it to the wealthiest people in this country. Didn't pay for that, no offset for that. They gave us the Medicare Part D program written by the insurance and drug companies, which was not as cost-effective a program as it should be, unpaid for. And then on top of all of that, because of the Wall Street caused recession revenue as a percentage of GDP is now less than it has been in 60 years at 15.2%. Less money is coming in. So that's the cause of the deficit. These guys voted for the wars without paying for it, voted for Medicare Part D without paying for it, voted for tax breaks without paying.
Right.
And now they say, oh, we got to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Yeah.
That is totally absurd.
But I want to emphasize something that you mentioned his name, but what's particularly relevant, I think, here is that Paul Ryan, right, voted for both wars. He voted for the tax cuts, and he voted for Medicare Part D.
Absolutely. Right? Now, isn't that surprising?
Yeah.
Oh, my word. Aren't we just shocked that he voted for all of those things, and now he is just ever so concerned and believes that we have to cut Social Security, which has nothing to do with the deficit.
As we pointed out a little bit earlier, too, Senator Sanders, Paul Ryan yesterday told a radio interviewer that he never asked for any stimulus money for his district because the stimulus was just wrong. And some enterprising reporters have already unearthed 4 different letters that he sent to Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu, the secretary, asking, in fact, for stimulus money for his district. So he wants to have it both ways on a lot of stuff, it seems.
Well, it's really worse than that. It is folks like Ryan and Romney. You know, it was interesting that one of Ryan's first major efforts since he became the nominee, vice presidential nominee, was to go meet with Sheldon Adelson, who, as you know, is worth $20 billion and is funding a lot of the Republican Party, I think. And
under investigation for a lot of funny stuff in Macau. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think the bottom line here is it really is not complicated. If you and I were to sit around and say, okay, what do the billionaires of this country want? What do these guys who have so much wealth want? And you look at the Republican agenda, it's essentially what they want. They want tax breaks for the very wealthiest people, despite the fact that today, Bill, we have a grotesquely unfair distribution of wealth and income in this country. You have the top 1% owning 40% of the wealth. That's people like Mr. Adelson and the Koch brothers. You have the bottom 60%, majority of the people owning less than 2%. Mm-hmm. And the gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is getting wider and wider. And what do these guys want? More tax breaks for the very wealthiest people in this country. They want more deregulation of Wall Street, despite the fact that Wall Street deregulation caused this terrible recession. More unfettered free trade so we can send more jobs to China and other low-wage countries. And that's really, I don't think this campaign is more complicated than that.
Senator Bernie Sanders, I guess. Senator, I'll let you go in just a second, but I would like to ask you about, we talked Social Security, about one other program, and that is Medicare. What would the impact be? What would happen if indeed Paul Ryan has his way? Mitt Romney said he loves his plan of making Medicare a voucher program.
Okay, I'll tell you what would happen, Bill. I want listeners to imagine that they are 67, 68 years of age. They walk into a doctor's office. They're diagnosed with cancer or some terrible illness. And then what they have from Medicare is a check for $8,000 to go out and get a private insurance policy. Now, just think for a moment. If you're diagnosed with cancer, and by the way, these guys, by that time, if they do what they say they would do, they would have repealed the Affordable Care Act.
Yes,
so you don't get any protection if you have a pre-existing condition. So you walk into a private insurance company, you say, I'm 68 years old, I have cancer, and I've got $8,000 in my pocket from Medicare. Please give me your best policy. And what do you think the insurance company is going to say? Yeah, okay, yeah, right. You're going to really get a great policy. We can put you in the hospital, 5 days or something, whatever it may be, I don't know. But that's what it is.
Yeah, and the difference, whatever you need, is you're just going to have to cough up yourself, right?
Well, what happens if you don't have any money, Bill?
Exactly. Yeah, right.
I mean, what happens to you then? And I'll tell you something else. It's not just Medicare. They want to make devastating cuts in Medicaid. They want to, which means that right now, as a nation, we should all be ashamed of this. We lose about 45,000 people every year. People die because they don't have insurance, don't get to a doctor when they should. If you throw millions more people off of